I never thought signing a piece of paper could destroy my daughter's lives. But here I am, Chukwuemeka Okafor, sitting in the front of my boss car while my world crumbles around me. My hands won't stop shaking on the steering wheel, even though the engine isn't running. In exactly 3 hours, I have to tell Adaeze and Amara that I sold their futures to the devil himself, and the devil wears Italian suits and speaks perfect Korean. Welcome back to Obsessed with Afro-Korean. If this story has you hooked, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping soon. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how global this community is. All right, let's get back to it. Let me back up because you need to understand how a man like me, a simple driver from Enugu who came to Seoul chasing dreams, ended up in debt to Jin-Woo Park for $3 million. $3 million. The number still makes my stomach turn. It started 5 years ago when I became Jin-Woo's personal driver. I didn't ask questions about the men who climbed into the car with blood on their clothes or the packages we delivered at 3 in the morning to warehouses that didn't exist on any map. I just drove, kept my mouth shut, collected my paycheck. It was good money, better than anything else I could find in this city where my engineering degree from Nigeria meant nothing. "Chuka, you're early today." Jin-Woo's voice cut through my memories as he slid into the back seat. Even at 7 in the morning, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, not a hair out of place, his cologne expensive enough to pay my rent. "Yes, Mr. Park," I said, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. Traffic was light. He smiled, but it was the smile of a shark. "Good. We need to talk about your request." My heart hammered against my ribs. 2 weeks ago, I'd done something I swore I'd never do. I'd asked Jin-Woo for money. Not a small amount either, $3 million to send my twin daughters to medical school. Both of them had been accepted into the prestigious programs they'd dreamed about since they were little girls playing doctor with their stuffed animals. But the tuition, the fees, the living expenses, it was impossible. I'd already taken out every loan I could find, sold everything of value I owned, and I was still $2.5 million short. "Drive to the office," Jin-Woo said. "We'll discuss terms there." The 15-minute drive felt like 15 hours. I kept glancing at him in the mirror, trying to read his expression, but Jin-Woo's face revealed nothing. That was what made him so dangerous in his world. You never knew what he was thinking until it was too late. His office occupied the top floor of a building in Gangnam, all glass and steel, and views that stretched across Seoul like a kingdom. I'd been there hundreds of times, but today it felt different. Today I wasn't just the driver. Today I was a man begging. "Sit," Jin-Woo said, gesturing to the chair across from his massive mahogany desk. I sat, my palms sweating, leaving marks on my pants. He pulled out a folder, thick with documents, and slid it across to me. "I've reviewed your request. Your daughters are exceptional students. Adaeze ranked first in her undergraduate class. Amara's research on infectious diseases has been published in international journals. They're impressive young women." "Yes, sir, they're my everything." "I'm prepared to give you the full $3 million, but there are conditions." Of course there were. "I'll pay you back, Mr. Park, every won. I'll work double shifts. He held up a hand, silencing me. "The interest rate is 15% annually. You have 2 years to repay in full. If you cannot meet this deadline, alternative arrangements will be made." 15%. The number made me dizzy, but what choice did I have? What kind of alternative arrangements? "That's outlined in the contract," he said. "Page 23, Section 4. I suggest you read carefully." I should have. God, I should have taken those papers home, had them translated, consulted a lawyer, anything. But all I could think about was Adaeze's face when she'd gotten her acceptance letter, how she'd cried happy tears for the first time since her mother died. All I could think about was Amara's quiet determination, her whispered prayers every night that somehow we'd find a way. The contract was in Korean, legal Korean. I could speak conversational Korean after 5 years in Seoul, enough to order food and ask for directions and chat with Jin-Woo about weather and traffic. But these words were dense, incomprehensible, full of terminology I'd never encountered. "Mr. Park, my Korean isn't good enough for legal documents. Could someone explain?" "Page 23, he interrupted. "There's an English summary of key terms. 2-year period, 15% annual interest, standard late payment penalties. It's all very straightforward, Chuka. I'm not trying to trick you. You've been loyal to me for 5 years. This is me helping a trusted employee." I found page 23. The English summary was indeed there, just as he said. 2 years, 15% interest, late payment penalties that seemed harsh, but not impossible. I could do this. I'd work every hour God gave me. I'd take side jobs. I'd figure it out. Where do I sign? Jin-Woo's smile widened slightly, and if I'd been paying attention, if I hadn't been so desperate and grateful and relieved, I might have noticed something predatory in that smile, but I didn't. I just signed. Page after page after page, my hand cramping up, my mind already calculating payment schedules and budgets. "Excellent," Jin-Woo said when he finished. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and mine buzzed. $3 million, transferred to your account. Use it wisely, Chuka. Education is the greatest gift you can give your children. "Thank you, Mr. Park. Thank you so much. I swear I'll pay you back. Every single—" "He know you will," he said, his tone almost gentle, "one way or another." I left his office feeling like I could fly. $3 million, my daughter's dreams secured. Yes, the debt was massive, but I had 2 years to make miracles. I'd done harder things. I'd left my home country with nothing, built a life in a foreign land, raised 2 brilliant daughters alone after my wife passed. I could handle this. That was 2 years ago. Now I'm parked outside the library where Adaeze and Amara are studying, and in my hand is a black envelope that arrived this morning. Inside is a copy of my contract with certain sections highlighted in red, sections I never saw because they weren't in the English summary on page 23, sections that explain exactly what alternative arrangements means. My daughters, my beautiful, brilliant daughters. I've sold them to Jin-Woo Park, and I didn't even know it until today. I open the car door. My legs barely support my weight. In a few minutes, I'll walk into that library and destroy their world. I'll tell them that their father, the man who raised them to be strong and independent and never let anyone control them, has signed away their freedom to a Mafia boss who now owns them like property. What have you done when the person you trusted most betrayed you without meaning to? Drop a comment below, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's lived through something like this. And if you want to find out how my daughters react when I tell them the truth, you need to stick around for what happens next. Trust me, their response is nothing I expected. I push open the library door and walk towards their usual table, each step feeling like walking to my own execution. Adaeze saw me first. My daughter has always had a sixth sense for trouble, could read my moods before I even opened my mouth. The moment her eyes locked on mine across the library, her expression shifted from concentrated to concerned. "Papa?" She stood up, her medical textbook forgotten. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Amara looked up then, softer than her sister, but just as perceptive. "You look sick, Papa. Come sit down." I couldn't speak. The words were trapped in my throat like stones. I just stood there holding that black envelope, my hands trembling so badly the paper rattled. "Papa, you're scaring us." Adaeze grabbed my arm, her grip firm, strong. She'd always been the fierce one, ready to fight the world. "What's wrong?" "We need to go somewhere private," I finally managed. "Please, just come with me." They exchanged a look, that twin telepathy they'd had since birth, then quickly packed their things. The walk to my car was silent, except for the sound of our footsteps and my ragged breathing. I felt like I was drowning on dry land. Once we were in the car, doors closed, the world shut out. Amara touched my shoulder gently. "Papa, whatever it is, we can handle it. We're together." That broke me. I put my face in my hands and the sobs came, ugly and raw. I cried like I hadn't cried since their mother died, since the day I became the only thing standing between my daughters and a cruel world. "Papa!" Adaze's voice cracked with panic. "Please, you're terrifying us. What happened?" I handed her the envelope. "Read it, both of you. Page 17, section 4. Adaeze opened it with shaking fingers, while Amara leaned close, both of them scanning the Korean text. I watched their faces in the rearview mirror as comprehension dawned, watched the exact moment their world shattered. "No," Adaeze whispered. "No, this can't be real. Papa, tell me this is some kind of sick joke." Amara's face had gone gray. It says if you couldn't repay the loan within 2 years, the debt transfers to your most valuable assets. And here, Papa, here you listed us, our names, our birth dates, our identification numbers." "I didn't know." The words exploded out of me. "I swear to God, I didn't know what I was signing. There was an English summary. It didn't mention any of this. I thought I was just signing for a loan." "You borrowed $3 million from Jin-Woo Park." Adaze's voice rose, sharp and cutting. "The Jin-Woo Park? The man whose name makes people cross the street? The one whose business you've been too afraid to even tell us about?" "I did it for you, for both of you, your education, your dreams." "Our dreams?" Adaeze laughed, but it was bitter, broken. "Papa, what dreams are we supposed to have now? According to this, we're supposed to marry him, both of us, at the same time. We're supposed to become the wives of a mafia boss because you signed us away like we're cattle." "Adaeze, stop!" Amara's voice was quiet, but it cut through the rising hysteria. "Screaming won't help. Won't help. Amara, he sold us. Our own father sold us to a criminal." I flinched at every word, because they were all true. Every accusation, every bit of rage. I deserved it all and more. Amara kept reading, her finger tracing the Korean characters. "It says, the marriage must take place within 1 week of the deadline. That was yesterday. Papa, why are you only telling us now?" "I thought I could pay it back," I said, my voice hollow. "I worked every hour I could. I took extra jobs. I saved everything. But it wasn't enough. The interest kept growing and growing. And then last month I got sick, missed 2 weeks of work, and—" I gestured helplessly at the envelope. "That arrived this morning." "Can we run?" Adaeze asked. "Go to the police? This can't be legal, even in Korea. Human trafficking is illegal everywhere." "You think the police will help?" I shook my head. "Jin-Woo owns half the force. And technically, it's not trafficking. I signed a contract, legally witnessed, notarized. In Korea's underground world, these contracts are binding." "So we're just supposed to accept this?" Adaze's eyes flashed with fury. "Marry some man we've never met? Both of us? Share a husband like we're living in some medieval nightmare?" Amara had gone very still, that look on her face that meant her analytical mind was working through every angle. "What happens if we refuse?" I'd been dreading that question. "The contract specifies consequences for breach. They're not specific about what those consequences are, but Jin-Woo's reputation suggests they wouldn't be pleasant for any of us." "He'd kill you," Amara said flatly. "That's what you're saying. If we refuse, he'd kill you." The silence that followed was suffocating. "Then we don't have a choice," Amara finally said. "What?" Adaeze turned to her sister, eyes wide. "Amara, you can't be serious." "What choice do we have?" Amara's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking.
Run, and Papa dies. Refuse, and Papa dies. Go to the police, and Papa dies. Probably us too. The only option that keeps everyone alive is... No, Adaeze grabbed her sister's hand. No, there has to be another way. We could leave Korea, all of us, tonight. Just disappear. And go where? Amara asked. Papa, do you have money for 3 plane tickets, passports that aren't flagged, somewhere to hide from a man with international connections? I shook my head. I had nothing, less than nothing, just debt and shame and 2 daughters whose lives I'd destroyed. This is insane. Adaze's voice had lost its edge. Now she just sounded broken. We're supposed to get married in a week to a man we don't know? A criminal? I've met him, I said quietly. I've worked for him for 5 years. You've worked for him, Adaeze repeated, as his driver. That doesn't mean you know him, Papa. What's he like? Is he cruel? Violent? Does he hurt people? How could I answer that? Yes, Jin-Woo hurt people. He ran a criminal empire. Blood and violence were part of his world. But in 5 years of working for him, he never raised his voice, never threatened me, treated me with a strange kind of respect that I'd never quite understood. He's dangerous, I said finally, but he's not needlessly cruel. He has rules, codes. He's intelligent, calculated. Everything he does has a purpose. Great, said Adaeze sarcastically. We're marrying a calculated psychopath. That's so much better. What does he look like? Amara asked, and something in her tone made me look at her sharply. Why does that matter? It doesn't really. I'm just trying to picture our lives, trying to make this real in my head, because right now it feels like a nightmare I'm going to wake up from. I pulled out my phone and found a photo I'd taken a month or 2 ago, Jin-Woo standing in front of his building. This is him. Both girls leaned forward to look. Jin-Woo was 38, tall for a Korean man, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see everything. In the photo, he was in one of his expensive suits, looking every inch the powerful businessman he pretended to be. He's handsome, Amara said softly. That makes it worse, somehow. If he was hideous, at least we could hate him for something tangible. I hate him already, Adaeze muttered. Handsome or not, he's a monster who thinks he can buy human beings. Has he said anything about what he expects after the marriage? The implications of her question hung heavy in the air. I felt sick. The contract mentions producing heirs. It's outlined in Section 7. Of course it is. Adaze's laugh was sharp. He doesn't just want wives. He wants us to give him children, to trap us completely. We need to meet him, Amara said suddenly. Before the wedding, we need to look him in the eye and try to negotiate something, anything. Maybe if we explain... Explain what? Adaeze cut her off. That we don't want to be sold like property? I'm sure that'll shock him. Maybe we can find another way to pay the debt, work for him, but not as wives. We're smart, educated. We must be worth something to his organization beyond just being breeding stock. It was desperate, but it was something, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness. I can arrange a meeting, I said quietly. But girls, you need to understand, Jin-Woo doesn't negotiate from weakness. If you go to him begging, he'll see it as pathetic. You need to be strong. Show him you're not just going to collapse. Strong. Adaze's jaw set in that stubborn way I knew so well. Fine, let's meet this monster. Let's see what kind of man thinks he can own us. Have you ever had to choose between your freedom and someone you love? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned because when my daughters finally meet Jin-Woo Park face to face, none of us get what we expected.
The meeting was set for the next morning at Jin-Woo's office. I barely slept that night, listening to my daughters talking in low voices in their shared bedroom, occasionally hearing Adaese's angry outbursts, followed by Amara's calming murmurs. They were so different, my girls, but they'd always been each other's strength. I prayed that strength would be enough for what was coming. I drove them to Gangnam in silence. Both had dressed carefully. Adaeze in a sharp black blazer and pants that made her look older, more formidable. Amara wore a navy dress, elegant and professional. They were presenting themselves as women to be taken seriously, not girls to be pushed around. I was proud and heartbroken in equal measure. "Remember what I said," I told them as we rode the elevator to the top floor. "Show no weakness. He respects strength." "Papa, stop coaching us," Adaeze said, her voice tight. "We're not going into a job interview. We're going to meet the man who thinks he owns us." The elevator doors opened directly into Jin-Woo's office. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to us, hands clasped behind him. He didn't turn around immediately, and I realized it was a power play, making us wait, making us come to him. "Mr. Park," I said, "my daughters, Adaeze and Amara." He turned slowly, and I watched his face as he saw them for the first time in person. Something flickered in his eyes, gone too quickly to identify. Surprise? Appreciation? I couldn't tell. "Please, sit," he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged in front of his desk. His voice was smooth, cultured, giving nothing away. Adaeze remained standing. "I prefer to stand, thank you." "Adaeze," I warned, but Jin-Woo held up a hand. "It's fine, Chuka. Let her stand if she prefers." He moved to his desk, settling into his chair with practiced ease. "I assume you've read the contract." "We've read it," Amara said, her voice steady. "We're here to discuss alternatives." "Alternatives?" Jin-Woo leaned back, studying them both with dark, unreadable eyes. "What kind of alternatives did you have in mind?" "We work for you, but not as your wives. We're both highly educated. Adaeze has a degree in finance with expertise in international markets. I have a background in medicine and research. Surely we're more valuable to your organization using our actual skills rather than as decorative wives." I saw the corner of Jin-Woo's mouth twitch, almost a smile. "Decorative? Is that what you think this is about?" "Isn't it?" Adaese's voice was sharp. "You could have any woman you want. Why force two women who don't know you, who don't want you, into marriage, unless it's about possession, about showing your power?" "Ada," I said sharply, my heart racing, "you didn't speak to Jin-Woo Park like that and expect to walk away unscathed." But Jin-Woo simply looked at Adaeze with something like interest. "You're angry. That's understandable. But you're wrong about my motivations." "Then explain them," Adaeze challenged. "Explain why you need two wives. Explain why you constructed this debt trap for our father. Explain why you think you have the right to control our lives." The room fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel sweat running down my spine. Jin-Woo stood, and for a moment I thought he might explode, might call his guards, might do something terrible. Instead, he walked around his desk and leaned against it, arms crossed, studying both women. "Your father saved my life 5 years ago," Jin-Woo said. I froze. We'd never talked about that night, Jin-Woo and I. I'd assumed he wanted it forgotten. "What?" Amara looked at me, confused. "There was an attempt on my life," Jin-Woo continued. "A senior member of my organization, someone I trusted, tried to put a bullet in my head. Your father was driving me home from a meeting. He saw the gun in the rearview mirror, saw what was about to happen, and he swerved the car deliberately into a wall, broke his own ribs, gave himself a concussion, but the impact threw off the shooter's aim, saved my life." "Papa never told us," Amara whispered. "I asked him not to," Jin-Woo said. "I gave him the driver position to keep him close, to protect him from retaliation. But I've been watching your family for 5 years, watching you two grow into remarkable young women. When your father needed money for your education, I saw an opportunity." "An opportunity to trap us?" Adaeze said coldly. "An opportunity to bring you into my world," Jin-Woo corrected. "I'm dying, Adaeze. I have a blood disorder that gives me perhaps 3 years if I'm lucky. I need successors, not wives. I need people intelligent enough to run an empire, principled enough to transform it, and loyal enough not to betray me the moment I'm gone." The revelation hung in the air like a bomb. I stared at Jin-Woo, seeing him differently now. The slight thinness I'd noticed in recent months, the occasional tremor in his hands he tried to hide, the way he sometimes seemed exhausted despite sleeping normal hours. "You're lying," Adaeze said, but her voice was uncertain now. "I wish I was," Jin-Woo said, pulling out a folder from his desk drawer and tossing it to her. "Medical records. You have a background in science, Amara. You can verify their authenticity." Amara opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents. Her face went pale. "This is real. Hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia with severe complications. The progression is—" She looked up at Jin-Woo. "You should be dead already." "Experimental treatments," Jin-Woo said. "Very expensive experimental treatments that have bought me some time, but not much." "So what?" Adaeze threw the folder on his desk. "You're dying, so you decided to buy yourself companionship for your final years? That doesn't make this okay." "I don't want companionship," Jin-Woo said, harder now. "I want to dismantle my empire and rebuild it as something legitimate. I want to take the blood money and turn it into hospitals, schools, legitimate businesses that actually help people. But I can't do it alone, and I can't do it with the vultures currently circling my organization. They'd tear it apart for profit the moment I'm gone." "Why should we believe you?" Adaeze demanded. "Why should we believe anything you say?" "Because you're here," Jin-Woo said simply. "You could have run. You could have let your father face the consequences alone. But you came, both of you, ready to sacrifice yourselves to protect him. That kind of loyalty, that kind of strength, that's what I need. Not wives, partners." "Then why does the contract say marriage?" Amara asked quietly. "Why the clause about heirs?" Rain fell against the windows like a distant drum roll. Jin-Woo ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time he looked uncomfortable. "Legitimacy in my world requires certain traditional structures. My organization is old-fashioned. They won't accept female leadership unless it comes through marriage, through blood ties. It's archaic, and I hate it, but it's reality." "So we're still just tools," Adaeze said coldly, "just with a prettier justification." "No," Jin-Woo's eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. "I'm offering you a choice, a real choice. You can walk away right now. I'll forgive your father's debt. You'll never hear from me again, and you can go back to your medical studies and live normal lives." "And if we stay?" Amara asked quietly. "If you stay, you learn my business, every aspect, finance, operations, security, everything. You learn how to run an empire. In 1 year, if you prove yourselves capable, and if you want to continue, we proceed with the marriage. But it would be a business partnership first, marriage second, and you'd have equal say in every major decision." "What if we want to leave after learning everything?" Adaeze asked suspiciously. "What's to stop us from taking all that knowledge and walking away?" "Nothing," Jin-Woo said. "That's the risk I'm taking. I'm betting that once you see what we can build together, once you understand the potential to actually change lives on a massive scale, you won't want to leave." I watched my daughters exchange one of their wordless conversations. Years of being twins, of sharing everything, had given them a connection I couldn't fully understand. "Can we have time to discuss this privately?" Amara asked. "Take all the time you need," Jin-Woo said, "but I'll need an answer by tomorrow. The contract deadline can't be extended without causing political problems within my organization." "Political problems in an illegal empire? That's almost funny," Adaeze said. "Every organization has politics, legal or illegal. You're smart enough to know that." "We'll give you our answer tomorrow," Amara said, standing. Adaeze followed her lead, and I scrambled to my feet as well. The elevator doors closed, leaving me in the hallway, my ear pressed against the door like a worried parent. Inside, I couldn't hear everything, but I heard Adaeze's voice, sharp and clear. If you're lying about any of this, if you hurt my father or my sister, I will burn your entire empire to the ground, and I won't care if I burn with it." And Jin-Woo's response, quiet but firm, "If I hurt either of you, I'd expect nothing less. In fact, I'd be disappointed if you didn't fight back." We spent the rest of that day in our small apartment, the three of us sitting around our worn kitchen table like we were preparing for war. In a way, I suppose we were. "He's manipulating us," Adaeze said for the 10th time, pacing the small space between the kitchen and living room. The dying man routine, the noble goal of transforming his empire, it's all designed to make us feel like we have agency when we don't. "Maybe," Amara said, from where she sat with Jin-Woo's medical records spread before her, "but these documents are real, Adaeze. I've cross-referenced the hospital stamps, the doctor's signatures, even called the research center listed here pretending to be a medical student. He's telling the truth about the illness." "So he's a dying manipulator instead of a healthy one?" Adaeze shot back. "That doesn't change the fundamental problem. We'd still be entering a forced marriage. We'd still be trapped." "Would we, though?" Amara looked up, her analytical mind working through the variables. "Think about what he's actually offering. A year to learn his business with no strings attached, equal partnership if we choose to continue, the power to transform a criminal organization into something that could actually help people." "You're actually considering this?" Adaeze stopped pacing, staring at her sister with disbelief. "Amara, this is insane." "Is it?" Amara gestured at the tiny apartment around us. "We came to Korea dreaming of becoming doctors, of helping people. But how many people can 2 doctors help in a lifetime? Hundreds? Maybe thousands if we're exceptionally dedicated? And you think marrying a mafia boss will let us help more?" Adaeze's voice dripped with sarcasm. "If we could legitimize his organization, redirect the resources toward hospitals, clinics, schools in underserved communities across Asia and Africa." Amara's eyes were bright now, seeing possibilities. "We could help millions, Adaeze. We could build something that outlasts us." "Or we could end up dead," Adaeze countered. "Or worse, become the very thing we hate. Criminals with good intentions are still criminals." I'd been silent, listening to them debate, but now I spoke. "Whatever you decide, I'll support it, but you need to understand something. If you walk away, Jin-Woo will forgive the debt like he promised. I believe that. But there will be consequences in his organization for appearing weak, for backing down from a contract. He'll face challenges, possibly violence from those who want to take his place. That's not our problem," Adaeze said firmly. "He made his choices, built his empire on blood and violence. If it falls apart, that's on him, not us." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not your problem. I just want you to have all the information." Amara stood, walking to the window that overlooked our neighborhood. "I keep thinking about what he said, about loyalty, about strength. He's right that we came to protect you, Papa. We could have run, could have put ourselves first, but we didn't because family matters more than safety." "Where are you going with this?" Adaeze asked quietly. "If we walk away, we save ourselves, but we leave behind an opportunity to actually change things on a scale we never imagined possible," Amara said slowly. "If we stay, we risk everything, but we might build something extraordinary." "Or we could end up his prisoners," Adaeze countered, "dressed up in expensive clothes and living in a gilded cage, but prisoners nonetheless." "Then we make sure that doesn't happen," Amara turned to her sister. "We go in with our eyes open. We learn everything we can. We look for leverage, for ways to protect ourselves. And at any point it becomes clear he's lying or using us, we burn it all down and run." "You sound like you've already decided," Adaeze said, and I heard her hurt in her voice. Amara crossed to her sister, taking both her hands. "I can't decide this alone, Adaeze. We're twins. We've never been apart. If you want to walk away, we walk away together. But I need you to really consider this, not just react from anger." Adaeze closed her eyes, and I saw her jaw working as she fought with herself. "I'm terrified," she finally whispered. "I'm so angry and so scared, and I don't know the right choice is." "Me too," Amara admitted. "But maybe there is no right choice. Maybe there's just the choice we can live with." They stood there, foreheads pressed together, the way they had since they were children, drawing strength from each other. I felt like an intruder in that moment, watching something private and profound. "1 year," Adaeze said, finally. "We give it 1 year. We learn everything. We look for angles. And if it feels wrong, if he gives us any reason not to trust him, we're gone. Deal?" "Deal," Amara agreed. They both turned to look at me, and I saw my babies transformed into women I barely recognized, strong, fierce, ready to walk into hell if it meant protecting what they loved. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Both of you?" "No," Adaeze said honestly, "but I'm sure that I'm not leaving Amara to do this alone, and I'm sure that if Jin-Woo Park thinks he's getting compliant little wives, he's in for a very rude awakening." The next morning, we returned to Jin-Woo's office. He was waiting, standing in the same spot by the windows, and I wondered if he'd slept at all, or if the illness made rest difficult. "We have conditions," Adaeze announced, before he could even greet us. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "First, no marriage for 1 year minimum," Adaeze said. "You said we'd have time to learn the business and prove ourselves. We want that in writing." "Agreed," Jin-Woo said without hesitation. "Second, equal access to all information. No secrets, no locked doors, no parts of the business we're not allowed to see." "Agreed, with one caveat. Some information is dangerous. People have died for knowing certain things. I'll give you access, but I'll also teach you how to protect yourselves with that knowledge." Adaeze glanced at Amara, who nodded. "Acceptable." "Third, we maintain our own living space," Amara added. "We're not moving into your house like live-in employees. We need independence, space that's ours." Jin-Woo considered this. "I can provide an apartment in the same building, top-floor security, separate entrance. You'll have your own space, but you'll be close enough that we can work together easily and I can ensure your safety." "Why do we need protection?" Adaeze asked sharply. "Because the moment you become known that you're associated with me, you become targets," Jin-Woo said bluntly. "I have enemies, lots of them. They won't hesitate to hurt you to get to me." "Fantastic," Adaeze muttered. "We're not even married yet, and we're already in danger." "You were in danger the moment your father signed that contract," Jin-Woo said. "At least this way you'll be trained to defend yourselves." "Fourth and final condition," Amara said at last. "At the end of 1 year, if we decide this isn't working, you let us walk away. No threats, no retaliation, no hunting us down. You forgive all debts and we part ways." Jin-Woo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes moving between both women. "That's a significant risk for me. You'll know everything about my operation. You could destroy me with that information." "Then I guess you'll have to trust us the way you're asking us to trust you," Adaeze said with a slight smile. To my surprise, Jin-Woo smiled back, a real smile, not the cold business mask he usually wore. "Fair enough. I'll have my lawyers draw up an amended contract with all these terms. You'll review it, have it translated and explained by independent counsel, and then, if you're satisfied, we'll sign it." "Just like that?" Amara sounded suspicious. "No argument? No negotiation?" "Because you came back," Jin-Woo said simply. "You could have run, could have disappeared in the night, let your father face the consequences. But you came back, laid out reasonable terms, and showed me you're exactly what I thought you were, smart, strong, and willing to take calculated risks. Why would I argue with that?" "When do we start?" Adaeze asked, and I heard her determination in her voice. My daughter had made her choice, and once Adaeze committed to something, she was unstoppable. "Today, if you're willing. I'll have the apartment prepared by this evening. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce you to my core team. They need to know you have my full authority and backing." They're going to hate us, Amara predicted. 2 outsiders, women, foreigners, suddenly elevated to positions of power, will have targets on our backs from inside the organization and outside. Probably, Jin-Woo agreed, which is why your first lesson starts now. In my world, respect isn't given, it's taken. You need to walk into that conference room like you own the place, because very soon you will. I watched my daughters exchange another look, saw them straighten their spines and lift their chins. They were scared, I could tell, but they weren't going to show it. "Lead the way," Adaeze said. Jin-Woo's smile widened. "Oh, I'm going to enjoy this." As they walked toward the conference room where Jin-Woo's inner circle waited, I sent up a prayer to my late wife. "I hope I'm doing right by them, my love. I hope this isn't the biggest mistake of my life." But as I watched my daughters walk into that room full of dangerous men with their heads held high, I felt something unexpected. Pride, and maybe, just maybe, hope. Have you taken a risk that terrified you but felt right anyway? Drop a comment and tell me about it. The conference room was full of men who looked like they'd killed people before breakfast. I counted 12 of them, all Korean, all wearing expensive suits that couldn't quite hide the violence in their eyes. They stopped talking the moment Jin-Woo entered with my daughters flanking him. The silence was hostile, aggressive. I stood by the door, trying to be invisible, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. "Gentlemen," Jin-Woo said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, "I'd like to introduce Adaeze and Amara Okafor. Starting today, they have full authority within this organization, second only to me. Any orders they give are to be treated as if they came from my own mouth." The silence somehow got heavier. Then a man at the far end of the table laughed, the sound ugly and dismissive. "You're joking, Hyung-nim. These are children, foreign children." "I'm 23, Adaeze said coolly, her Korean accent heavy but clear. "Old enough to have a degree in international finance, old enough to speak 4 languages, and old enough to see that you're Min-ho Kang, based on the scar on your left hand that matches descriptions I've read in the organization's internal reports." Min-ho's eyes widened slightly. He glanced at Jin-Woo. "She's been reading our files?" "Every single one," Jin-Woo confirmed. "Both of them spent last night memorizing the organizational structure, key personnel, current operations, and outstanding conflicts. Would you like Amara to recite your medical history, or shall we move on?" Another man spoke up, this one younger, maybe early 30s, with cold eyes. "With respect, Hyung-nim, this is madness. The other families will see this as weakness. 2 outsiders with no experience, no proven loyalty, suddenly in positions of power? They'll attack." "Let them try," Jin-Woo said, "and they'll learn the same lesson I learned. Never underestimate someone because of their age, gender, or origin." "I have a question," Amara said, her voice steady despite the room full of hostile stares. "You're Sang-Woo Lee. You run the Eastern Territory operations. Your revenue has dropped 17% over the last 6 months, but you've been reporting only a 10% decline. Where's the missing 7% going?" The room went dead silent. Sang-Woo's face had gone pale, then red. "How dare you accuse me?" "I'm not accusing, I'm asking. The numbers don't match. Either you're skimming, which would be incredibly stupid given Jin-Woo's reputation, or someone under you is skimming and you haven't noticed, which would be incompetent. So which is it?" Sang-Woo looked at Jin-Woo, something like panic in his eyes. "Hyung-Nim, I can explain. You have 24 hours to find the leak and fix it. If Amara could spot it in one night of reading reports, our enemies have definitely noticed. Handle it." Sang-Woo nodded, looking sick. I saw several other men at the table shifting uncomfortably, probably wondering what else my daughters had discovered in those files. "Anyone else have concerns about their capabilities?" Jin-Woo asked, his tone almost pleasant. An older man, distinguished-looking, with gray at his temples, spoke up. His voice was measured, respectful. Hyungnim, I don't question their intelligence, but intelligence alone doesn't prepare someone for this world. The first time they witness real violence, the first time they have to make a decision that costs lives, what then? That's a fair question, Jin-Woo acknowledged. He turned to Adaeze. How would you answer that, Adaeze? Adaeze met the older man's eyes directly. You're right. I've never seen real violence. I've never had to make life or death decisions. But you know what I have done? I've watched my mother die slowly from cancer while we couldn't afford the treatment that might have saved her. I've held my sister's hand while she cried herself to sleep in a country where people spit on us for being different. I've watched my father work himself to exhaustion, trying to give us a better life. So no, I haven't lived your specific experiences, but don't mistake a lack of violence for a lack of strength. The older man studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'm Jin-Woo Park, no relation to Jin-Woo despite the name. I manage our legitimate business fronts. He gestured to the empty chairs. Please, sit. If we're to work together, we should at least be civilized about it. It was an olive branch. Adaeze and Amara took the offered seats, and I saw some of the tension leave the room. Not all of it, but enough. Let's be clear about something, Jin-Woo said, remaining standing. I didn't bring Adaeze and Amara into this organization on a whim. Each of you was chosen for specific skills. Min-ho, you're a brilliant strategist. Sang-woo, when you're not sloppy, you run the tightest operation in our territories. Hae-won, you've kept our legitimate businesses thriving for 15 years. He paused, letting that sink in. But all of you are limited by the world you've grown up in. You think in terms of territory and violence and traditional power structures. Adaeze and Amara think differently. They see angles you don't, possibilities you've never considered. That's why they're here. And when other families come asking questions, when they demand to know why Korean Mafia is taking orders from African women, how do we answer that without looking weak? You tell them that intelligence doesn't have a nationality and power doesn't have a gender, and if they have a problem with that, they're welcome to take it up directly with Jin-Woo. Min-ho actually smiled at that, a small, grudging thing. You've got steel in you, I'll give you that. We're going to need it, Adaeze said. From what I've read, this organization has enemies on all sides. The Jung family to the north is expanding aggressively. The Chinese syndicate is pushing into our western territories. And internally, there's been 3 attempted coups in the last 2 years alone. 4, Hae-won corrected quietly. One of the younger members in Sang-woo's division. He's been dealt with. Dealt with meaning dead? Amara asked bluntly. Dealt with meaning he's no longer a problem, Hae-won said carefully. I watched my daughters process that. This was the reality of the world they'd entered. People didn't just get fired here, they disappeared. I need to know, Adaeze said, her voice steady despite the heavy topic. If we're going to have authority in this organization, we need to understand the boundaries. What decisions require Jin-Woo's approval? What can we do independently? Operational decisions are yours. Territory management, business strategy, resource allocation. But anything involving permanent solutions to personnel problems comes to me first. Permanent solutions meaning executions? Amara clarified. Yes. Good, Adaeze said coolly, because we're not interested in that side of things anyway. Our value is in building, not destroying. Sometimes destroying is necessary to build, Min-ho pointed out. What happens when you face a problem that can't be solved with spreadsheets and clever thinking? Then we'll come to you, Adaeze said simply. We're not trying to replace anyone. We're trying to add capabilities this organization doesn't currently have. It was smart, I realized, positioning themselves as complementary rather than competitive, making the existing power structure feel less threatened. The meeting continued for another hour. My daughters asked questions, offered observations, and slowly, grudgingly, I watched some of the men in that room start to respect them. Not all of them. A few, including Sang-woo, still looked hostile, but it was a start. When the meeting finally ended, Hae-won approached us as others filled out. May I speak with you privately? He asked, my daughters. Jin-Woo nodded permission, and Hae-won led us to a smaller office down the hall. Once the door was closed, his entire demeanor changed. The formal, careful businessman disappeared, replaced by something warmer. "I wanted to warn you," he said in English, his accent much lighter than I expected. "Not everyone in that room is going to accept you, no matter how smart you prove to be. Some of them have daughters, sisters, wives they've kept carefully separated from this life. Seeing you here challenges everything they believe about how the world should work." "You have daughters," Amara said. It wasn't a question. Haewon smiled sadly. "Two. Both in university in America, studying law and medicine. They know nothing about what I really do, and I intend to keep it that way, which is why I'm going to help you." "Why?" Adaeze asked suspiciously. "Because Jin-Woo is right. This organization needs to change or it will die. And if it dies violently, a lot of innocent people will get caught in the crossfire, including my daughters when enemies come looking for leverage." He pulled out a small card and handed it to Amara. "My private number. If you need advice, someone to explain the political dynamics, or just someone who won't immediately assume you're incompetent because of your age or gender, call me." "Thank you," Amara said softly, pocketing the card. "Don't thank me yet," Haewon said. "You've walked into a snake pit. The next few months are going to test you in ways you can't imagine. But if you survive them, if you can actually pull off what Jin-Woo is hoping for," he trailed off, shaking his head, "it would be something to see." After he left, Adaeze turned to me. "Papa, you should go home, get some rest. We're going to be here late learning the systems." "Are you sure? I can wait, drive you home." "We're sure," Amara said gently. "We have security now, apparently, and you look exhausted." I was exhausted and scared, and still not entirely sure we'd made the right choice. But as I hugged both my daughters goodbye, I felt something else too. Pride. They'd walked into a room of dangerous men and held their own. They'd shown strength and intelligence and courage. "Be careful," I whispered. "Both of you." "Always," they promised. I left them there in Jin-Woo's building, my brilliant, brave daughters stepping into a world of shadows and violence with their eyes open, and I prayed that their strength would be enough to survive what was coming. 3 months passed like a fever dream. I barely saw my daughters during that time. They moved into the apartment Jin-Woo provided, a sleek modern space on the top floor of his building with views across Seoul that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. When I did see them, usually for brief Sunday dinners, they looked different, harder, more confident, like they were becoming people I didn't quite recognize. "Papa, you're staring," Adaeze said one Sunday, catching me watching them as they discussed supply chain logistics with the casual fluency of people who'd been doing this for years, not months. "Sorry," I said, "you've both changed so much." "We've had to," Amara said gently. She was wearing designer clothes now, her hair styled professionally. Both of them had transformed from students to something else entirely. "This world doesn't allow for weakness." "Have you been safe? Really safe?" They exchanged a look I couldn't read. "Define safe," Adaeze finally said. My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Nothing we couldn't handle," Amara said quickly. "There was an incident 2 weeks ago. Someone tried to send a message by attacking us in the parking garage. Jin-Woo's security intervened." "Someone tried to attack you?" My voice rose. "And you didn't tell me?" "Because you would have reacted exactly like this," Adaeze said. "Papa, we're fine. The men who tried it are no longer a problem." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my daughters in danger, about the choice we'd made, about whether I'd saved them from one trap only to walk them into another. So the next morning I went to Jin-Woo's office unannounced. He was surprised to see me. "Chuka, is everything all right?" "No," I said honestly. "My daughters were attacked, and I had to hear about it weeks later like it was nothing. That's not all right." Jin-Woo's expression softened. "Sit, please." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, even though it was barely 10 in the morning. The attack was a test. Minho's nephew, trying to prove they didn't belong. He thought catching them alone would be easy. "What happened to him?" Amara broke his wrist with a move she learned in the self-defense training we've been doing. Adaeze called security, but she also negotiated with him while they waited. By the time my men arrived, she'd extracted a full confession about who put him up to it and why. Despite my fear, I felt a flicker of pride. That sounds like them. They're extraordinary, Chuka. In 3 months, they've reorganized our financial operations, identified corruption in 3 different divisions, and started building relationships with legitimate businesses that could help us transition. Wan says Adaeze has a gift for reading contracts that borders on supernatural, and Amara's been working with our medical operations, cleaning up our relationships with hospitals, making everything more professional. But they're still in danger. They'll always be in danger now, Jin-Woo said bluntly. That doesn't go away, but they're learning to navigate it, and they're better at this than I ever imagined. Do you... I hesitated, then pushed forward. Do you care about them? Really care, not just as assets to your organization? Jin-Woo was quiet for a long moment, swirling his whiskey. More than I should, he finally admitted. I brought them here for strategic reasons, but somewhere over the last 3 months, watching them transform my organization, seeing their minds work, the way they challenge me and push back, and refuse to accept my authority just because I'm me. He looked up, and his eyes were raw with something I'd never seen before. Yes, Chuka, I care about them, both of them, in ways I didn't expect and probably shouldn't feel. They're my daughters, I said quietly. If you hurt them, you'll kill me yourself, I know. Jin-Woo smiled slightly. You wouldn't be the first to threaten me today. Adaeze made her own threats this morning when I suggested she was taking on too much work. She did? Told me if I ever implied she was weak again, she'd restructure my entire Eastern Division just to prove a point. He shook his head, but there was affection in it. She's terrifying, Chuka. Your daughter is absolutely terrifying. Both of them are, I said with a father's pride. Always have been. I left his office feeling slightly better, but still worried. My daughters were thriving in this dangerous world, but at what cost? What were they becoming? I got my answer 2 weeks later, when everything exploded. Adaeze called me at 3 in the morning, her voice tight with control. Papa, I need you to stay in your apartment. Lock the doors. Don't answer for anyone except for me or Amara. What's happening? Min-ho just made his move. He's been planning a coup for months, and we just found out. There's going to be violence tonight. Jin-Woo's handling it, but we needed to make sure you were safe first. Where are you? Are you safe? We're with Jin-Woo. We're fine. Just stay inside, Papa, please. She hung up before I could argue. I spent the next 6 hours pacing my apartment, my phone clutched in my hand, jumping at every sound. Finally, as dawn broke, my door opened and both my daughters walked in, looking exhausted but alive. I grabbed them both, holding tight. What happened? Min-ho had allies in 4 divisions, Amara said, sinking onto my couch. He was going to kill Jin-Woo tonight, take over the organization, and use us as bargaining chips with rival families. But he didn't know we'd been tracking his communications for weeks, Adaeze continued, dropping beside her sister. We knew exactly when he'd move, where his people were positioned, everything. Jin-Woo confronted him an hour ago. It's over, Amara said quietly. I didn't ask what over meant. I was learning not to ask those questions. Are you both really okay? We're tired, Adaeze admitted, and maybe a little shaken, but we're okay, Papa. Over the next few weeks, I watched the organization transform. With Min-ho gone, along with his supporters, there was suddenly room for the changes Jin-Woo had been planning. Adaeze and Amara moved quickly, implementing new structures, bringing in outside consultants to help legitimize operations, building bridges with legitimate businesses that could help the organization transition. Handful of them were now legitimate businesses. They'd established scholarships, built clinics, created jobs. The criminal empire was slowly becoming something that could actually make a difference in the world. What would you risk for love? Drop your thoughts below.
And trust me, you need to see what happens when Jin-Woo finally tells my daughters how he feels, because it changes everything and leads to a night that creates the future none of them expected. Stay tuned for the conclusion.